Here we are on a Tuesday afternoon with the oak tree behind me in the background, budding out in the spring. The the message I wish everyone understood is that every single time that you get in nearer and nearer proximity to a firearm, a handgun especially, but a firearm in general, you put yourself not in more safety. You are not better protected. You put yourself in more danger. Danger of all sorts. Danger of destructive capacity for your life, for your marriage, for your freedom. Ownership of a gun makes it far more likely that your freedoms are taken away rather than that they are sustained. This is a lie from the NRA. The NRA is the marketing arm of Remington. They don't care how many people die or go to prison so long as they can make an extra $40. It's all money to them. When a person brings a gun into their home, first and right off the bat, it never ever leaves. It never ever wears out. I've had this, I call it my house coat, though I'm outside, this little jacket for years and years and years and years, but someday it's going to wear out. Not so with a pistol or a rifle. They never. If you put a handgun in its packaging in which it was purchased and put it in a drawer with its ammunition and leave it there for 40 years and then take it out, it will, in all probability, work just fine. Now, what does this mean? The majority of gun deaths are suicides. Why is that? Is that because that people who purchase firearms are mentally unstable? People who are just wanting to run out and kill themselves? No, not usually. What happens is the appliance that is designed specifically to kill people is in their house forever. It takes effort to rid oneself of a firearm, and that will be there forever. Can anyone guarantee that 3 years from now they won't have suicidal thoughts because their marriage or their life just falls apart? In 10 years, in 17 years, in 22 years, can anyone guarantee where they will be emotionally in that amount of time, in 30 years? That is why suicide is the greatest cause of gun deaths in the United States. But let's go on from that. A gun is in the house. A dear friend of mine, he was having a good evening, drinking up a storm. He was at his own home, not driving anywhere, but he was drinking, and somebody, he lives about 40 miles north of here, somebody called the police because he was making a bunch of noise. The police shows up, this guy's drunk, he runs into his house, grabs his handgun, runs back out, waving it around, and the police kill him. Of course they do. And nobody blames the police for doing that. The police should not be expected to stand around and be target practice for some besotted individual who has no judgment whatsoever. He can kill the policeman just as well, sober or drunk. And now my friend is dead. It kind of took my breath away. He was always a pleasant guy. We always had a smile for each other. At work, we worked together. Just a sickening situation. Oh goodness, the man up in Michigan. Oh yes, he's got his conceal and carry, so he's safe. And then he goes and gets into an argument with some little motel front desk clerk about some charge and he will preserve his rights, and he kills the desk clerk. Well, that's 28 years sitting in prison. But he has his freedom. No, he doesn't. Ah, my goodness, does he not have his freedom now? He stands up, as we speak, he stands up 5 times a day for a corrections officer to count him and all the cellmates and make sure they are where they're supposed to be. He is told when he can eat, when he can walk, when he must sleep, when all his activities are told him what to do and when to do it. He has no freedom. If my friend hadn't had a gun in his home when the police came, he'd still be alive. If that man hadn't been carrying a gun with him when he got into the argument with the desk clerk, he'd still be alive. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people who kill themselves with a gun would still be alive if that appliance specifically designed to reliably kill people was not in their home. Just north of here, my old stomping grounds where I went to high school, there was another 18-year-old. He worked at a motel, and he found out that somebody staying at the hotel had a couple of handguns, and he convinced some 16-year-old girl to take his gun and go in and hold up the guy and take his guns from him. Well, obviously now, the girl's dead. 16 years old, she's dead. You would hope that the young man pays a heavy cost. Of course, the man who had the 2 guns is doing just fine, and I don't know how he feels about that. I mean, no one blames him for what he did, but how'd you like that to sit with you? Some 16-year-old girl. Maybe it doesn't bother him at all. Maybe it does. It's a sickening situation that was only happening because of the number of guns involved. None of it would have happened if the young woman wasn't having a gun, if the young man didn't have a gun, and if the man hadn't checked into the hotel with his pistols as well. All these things cause death, and all of them are based on lies from the NRA.